Okay, let's talk about printing with opaque ink and the flood stroke. Now, you don't always need to use a flood stroke, but in a case like this where you have a big solid like this paw print, it's going to be kind of difficult to get coverage going. I've done one stroke, one ink pass on this, and as you can see, since I'm touching it, I've already flashed this. When you flash something, a good way to know if you've flashed it just enough, not too much, is just ding it with your fingernail a little bit. You should be able to leave a little dent in the surface of the ink. I don't know if you can see this. You really don't want to do that too much because it messes up the print. But if you can leave a fingernail print in your ink, but also touch it like this without getting it on your hands, you know that it's flashed correctly. So what I want is to lay a lot of ink down on this area here so that it's opaque on the shirt. So let's see how we're going to do that. I'll lower my screen. I'm going to take my squeegee, and this is some thick opaque ink. One thing you can do to get an easier print with opaque ink, if you're new at printing, is you can reduce it a little bit. I found that really doesn't change the opacity that much if you just put a little bit of reducer in it, but this ain't my first rodeo, so I'm going to go ahead and just do it out of the can. Make sure you have a lot of ink on your squeegee like this, so you don't run out of it. I'm going to do a flood stroke, and the first thing I'm going to do is just nicely drag that ink across the surface like that. So now I have a big thick layer of ink on my screen. Now this stroke, I'm going to shear it. I'm going to use a sharp angle on my squeegee and just lightly pull it down toward myself like that. Now you can see all the ink's sheared off the screen and it's into the open areas of the stencil. So the stencil is full of ink right now. So I'm going to do a couple, maybe one or two strokes with a firm stroke. Maybe I'll just get that paw one more time. And what that's going to do is lay a nice thick layer of ink down, and now it's nice and solid and opaque. And that's what I was trying to achieve. It takes a little bit more time to do it that way than it does to just go ahead and print it, but printing is kind of like it's kind of like Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel. You know, he had to finish it in a reasonable period of time, but he also wasn't going to cut corners. You don't want to do a bad job just to get the job done faster. So now this is a nice print. The customer's going to be pleased with this. Once again, to do a flood stroke, you coat it. I'm running out of ink here, but you give it a nice coating of ink. Your second stroke is to nicely shear it right through the stencil, and your final firm stroke drives it through that stencil and onto the surface of the shirt. I did it again just so you could see what I was doing. You might have heard it snap off of there. I should probably adjust my off contact a little bit. But there, that's a nice opaque print. And I'm ready to go to the next one. So that's the way I do a flood stroke, and that's the way I print opaque ink when I'm having trouble getting good coverage. You're going to have to practice before you get the technique down with your squeegee. Keep working with it, keep practicing, and I hope your next project goes well.